Hello. Hello. What's going on? Oh my goodness. How am I feeling today? That's how I'm feeling. So, you know, we're yes. No other words. Yes. Okay. I thought I would sit down and make a quick video. Hopefully it's a quick video. I don't know. I talk a shit ton, but I thought I'd sit down and talk about recent reads and recent acquisitions. So books that I've acquired recently, you know, I don't need to explain that any further, but books I've purchased recently-ish and the books that I've read recently. We have a short stack of each today, and let's just jump right into it. By the way, I want to hear what you've been reading recently. What have you been loving? My reading has slowed down so much lately, but that's okay. You know, different things go on in people's lives, and I think that we should respect the seasons of our lives. So yes, let's talk about the books that I've read recently right here. So we have a short stack. We have some poetry. Yeah, well, I mean, okay, so this is a poet. These first two are poets. One of them is a specific poetry collection. This one is a collection of letters and poems. So this is John Keats' So Bright and Delicate, Love Letters and Poems of John Keats to Fanny Braun. There is a really interesting podcast, actually. It's on the Penguin podcast about John Keats. And I would really recommend listening to it if you have any sort of interest at all in literature or in him specifically, or poetry or romantic poetry. I'd really recommend it. He's a very fascinating person. He died when he was 25. He was very sick, and he was very, very short and petite and frail. So he didn't see himself as this grand person, but he was such a grand character in everyone's lives that he knew, and everyone loved him, and there was not a bad word spoken about him, basically. That was in the introduction for this, as well as that podcast. But he lived a short life, but he had a beautiful romance. He really had a beautiful love story with this woman named Fanny Braun, and that's what this is about. And I guess he wrote in the, you know, when he met this girl, that he met her because they lived next to each other, and then they ended up living together for certain financial and convenience reasons, but that he didn't like her at first, and then of course he grew to love her. And the language, the love letters, and the just, beauty and pining, and it's devastating, but it's beautiful, because he was sick and he couldn't be with her, and he died again very young, and she lived, and she ended up getting married again, but she always kept this. She was buried specifically in the ring that John Keats gave her. Oh, what a romance. What a love story. So beautiful. I'm a sucker for a love story. Fucking sucker for a love story. But yeah, and then there's some, like I said, poems at the end, which were absolutely beautiful. And there was one in particular that I think is it called The Raven? There's a poem, and it's not in this because I read it. I did research after reading this, and I found it separately. Now I'm mad I didn't prepare this, but anyway, I think it's called The Name of a Bird. That was such a beautiful poem. If I can find it, I'll link it down below. But anyway, love alone has pains severe and many. Retweet. Yeah, I mean, I'd really recommend this. It wasn't anything monumental, I don't think, but if you are a sucker for love stories and you like the romantic poets, and you just want to read some love letters, or you're interested in John Keats, I think that you should 1,000,000% pick this up. I wish you could infuse a little confidence of human nature into my heart. I cannot muster any. The world is too brutal for me. I am glad there is such a thing as the grave. I am sure I shall never have any rest till I get there. Dang. Yeah, insane. Insane that he was so young and he created these amazing masterpieces. I think that poetry or beautiful art comes from intensity, and quite often I think that anything felt intensely is a type of pain. You know what I mean? Passion is, in a sense, overwhelming feeling, and anything overwhelming is in a way painful. But I think that when you're young, you feel everything so intensely because quite often you're feeling it for the first time. So I think it's probably quite conducive his age was probably quite conducive to producing such masterpieces, but it is crazy to think about it. Anywho, and then we have Rilke's Book of Hours, Love Poems to God, and it's really hard to talk about poetry because it's essentially just your emotional reactions to other people emotionally reacting to life. And all I can say is this resonated with me, this moved me, and if you should read it, you should fucking read it if you haven't already. I tabbed a few things. I read a poem from this when I hauled it, but let me read this one. On page 107. You many unassaulted cities, have you never yearned for the enemy? Yearned that he might besiege you for long, irresolute years until, in hopelessness and hunger you receive him, he extends like the land beyond your walls, and he knows he can hold out longer. Look from your balconies, there he camps. He does not tire or diminish in size or strength. He sends no messengers to threaten, or to promise, or persuade. He who will overcome you is working in silence. Beautiful. It's so many beautiful. So many beautiful. Let me read another one. Tabbed this a couple times, and I wrote a couple notes on this one, but this is page 77. She who reconciles the ill-matched threads of her life and weaves them gratefully into a single cloth. It's she who drives the loud mouths from the hall and clears it for a different celebration, where the one guest is you. In the softness of evening, it's you she receives. You are the partner of her loneliness, the unspeaking center of her monologues. With each disclosure, you encompass more, and she stretches beyond what limits her to hold you. And then I wrote, this is love. This is love. All beyond the noise. It's the silence. It's the dark. It's the awareness of the depths and a welcoming inside of it. That is love. So yeah, that's what I felt after reading that. But anyway. And then we have Woman at Point Zero. So this is a novel by Nawal El-Saadawi. I hope I pronounced that right. I'm just bad at that. But this is very feminist. And this was striking, and this was strong, and this had a deep, earthy aggression to it that was justified aggression, and it was deep and fathomless. They said, "You are a savage and dangerous woman. I am speaking the truth, and truth is savage and dangerous." Basically, in the beginning, we follow this woman who is a reporter, and she's going to these I think it's like self-insert, the main character, or the author, but she's going to these prisons where our reporter is doing work on the psychological state of female inmates. She encounters this one woman who just beguiles her. It's her quiet strength beguiles her, and she's so intently focused on this woman and learning this woman's story. And her energy, draws her. So this one woman in this prison cell, she's in there because she killed a man, so she's being sentenced to death. And she doesn't speak to anyone. And the night before she's put to death, she agrees to tell her story to the reporter. And so this book is her telling her full story to the reporter. So it's of her life being a young girl and growing up and what it's like living in a house entirely dictated by your father and your uncle, and the sexual abuse that she experienced from her uncle, and the attachment too that she had to her uncle, and her yearning for education and independence, and the society's inability to allow her to have that, and how hard she fights to get a semblance of that for herself, and how she's looked down upon for how she can get it. I mean, she's ends up becoming like a high-class prostitute, basically, and how she's looked down upon for that, and the dangers of that in general, and how no matter where you go, there is a man there waiting to take from you and dictate your life, and there's not too much, unfortunately, that can be done about it, because it's just the way society is set up, especially where this is set. But I think that trickles down in more subtle ways in any society. Not even subtle, but it's not always super obvious. But anyways, that's what I'm trying to say. It's everywhere. But this was a beautiful, striking book and quick to read. So if you like short books, I call these short books that are so intently focused on a specific theme art bombs. That's what I so intellectually dub them. These are art bombs, okay, because they're short, sweet, snappy, to the point. There's such economy of language, and you get a whole world and a whole theory then is now resting in your brain and shaking it up and changing your life. So yeah, Women at Point Zero. And then we have, last but not least, of the books that I've read, Happening by Annie Ernaux. So she recently won the Pulitzer, and I was really excited to pick this up. So super short. But this is about her account having to get an abortion, but unable to legally get an abortion. So the trials, I mean, just what she psychologically goes through and physically goes through to have to get this done. And it's yeah, it's just crazy. So well written too. So well written. And, you know, very devastating, but very difficult, very devastating. It's so sad that this was not that long ago, and now in so many places in the world, I'm getting emotional, what women have to go through by themselves. I mean, sure, we're going through it together, but, like, we go through these things alone, essentially, and it's just so many people. I mean, I don't want to say we, but, you know, like, it's just, it makes me cry. I'm crying, it makes me cry, okay? It's sad, it's so messed up, and yeah. The strength of women is all I have to say. The justified, the aggression, the beautiful, powerful aggression of females, and the psychological depth and strength and intelligence is stunning to me. Stunning. I love being able to sit with that and experience that. There's so many different voices all over the world and all throughout time. It's stunning. It's stunning to me. Did I say stunning enough? It's fucking stunning, okay? I believe that any experience, whatever its nature, has the inalienable right to be chronicled. There is no such thing as a lesser truth. Totally agree. And then we have books that I've recently acquired. So I haven't read these, so I don't have too much to say about them. So we'll quickly run through them, but they're right here. So after reading Happening by Annie Ernaux, I want to read everything she's written, but I picked up, this was the only one available at my bookstore. I picked up Do What They Say or Else, translated by Christopher Beach and Carrie Noland. First published in 1977. So this is set in a small town in Normandy. It's the story of a 15-year-old girl who lives with her working class parents, and it's a coming of age story, maybe her sexual awakening, transition from middle school to high school, stream of consciousness, just her observations of the world and her feelings growing up, and I'm really excited to read that one. This, I hadn't heard of this, but I'm really excited to read this, very curious, and I'm obsessed with this cover, okay, obsessed. The whole packaging situation, fantastic, okay? 10 out of 10. Great. This is Something to Do with Paying Attention. Fantastic title, man. Fantastic. By David Foster Wallace. So he wrote Infinite Jest, of course, and The Crying Lot of 49. I have not read either of those books. I find them to be intimidating. I don't even know how interested I am in those, if I'm being completely honest. I'm not really. Maybe at one point in my life I will be, but I'm not really. Yes, obviously, you know, Infinite Jest, it's reputation precedes it, so yeah, anyway. But this sounds extremely interesting to me. The Midwest, suburban Midwest of the 70s in America, a self-described wastoid, a young man adrift, whose life is changed forever by an encounter with advanced tax law. So probably, again, the ridiculousness of society and of life, and just very American. Probably very American. So disillusionment. I read the preface in the bookstore. It wasn't that long, and I read the first few pages, and it made me very excited to read about this. I love reading about disillusionment of the American dream and the ridiculousness of the way that life is set up. And I'm thinking that's what this is going to be about. And then we have, because I recently did read, which I wanted to talk about in a specific other video, but Of Mice and Men by John Steinbeck. And let me tell you, men really know how to disappoint you and then pull you back in at the last second, because he pulled me back in. I said I was going to be done after just like not necessarily loving 3 books by him, but Of Mice and Men was the 3rd book, and 5 fucking stars. Like, that was phenomenal. And now I still do really feel like Steinbeck is going to be someone that I really love. I mean, all the themes that he grapples with and writes about, and certain excerpts of his writing are so striking and profound, beautiful. And I read this letter, I read this thing online of a letter that he wrote to his son, or a response to a letter his son wrote him about falling in love for the first time. And just so beautiful and moving. But anyways, I ended up picking up Cannery Row, again by Steinbeck, which was published in 1945. It focuses on the acceptance of life as it is, the exuberance of community, and the loneliness of the individual. It's about all these people living in this town. They're interweaving stories. Only the fittest survive. Steinbeck's tough yet charming portrait of people on the margins of society, dependent on one another for both physical and emotional survival. I'm very excited to read that. And then we have Bukowski. We have Post Office by Charles Bukowski. So I'm really excited to read this. It's about a guy who's worked at a post office his whole life, and he just thinks life is ridiculous and everything's full of shit. And I love Bukowski, and I'm so excited to read this. Doesn't that sound good? I mean, like a down and out dude who's just over the shit. Bukowski's definitely a misogynist, which is what puts me off of him a little bit, but I do love him as a thinker and as a writer. So really excited to get to that one. 2 books that I'm actually currently reading. One of them I started today, but this is I Want to Die, But I Want to Eat Takeboki. I don't know how to pronounce that. Nonfiction, basically like a diary that this woman, Bake Sahi, translated by Anton Her. Oh, Anton Her, he translates shit like nobody's business. Honestly, he's always on the International Booker, right? Or he was twice this past year. The International Booker long list. What a brilliant man. A nonfiction account of this woman going through therapy for depression. And she, I think, recorded her therapy sessions and is transcribing them in this, and then talking a bit more about specific topics. And I like it so far. I don't love it, if I'm being completely honest, but I do think that it's interesting. I think that it could be very helpful. I think this is a pretty big book right now, which makes a lot of sense to me. Resonates probably a lot with, people who like Otessa Moshfegh and Sally Rooney, which, hey, I'm here for it. I'm living through this time as well, and I get it. Anyways, I've been reading this. I don't have too many thoughts. It's just fine. Will I haven't taken anything from it yet. Do I think I will? Probably not. Very slowly moving through that. Last but not least, before I leave you this evening, because it's evening, it's evening where I am. Yep. Last but not least, I got the first volume. I think there's only 2, but I got the first volume of Mouse by Art Spiegelman, which I put this in it because this is the part that I'm currently at. But I'm really excited to read this. Really excited to read this. I know this is on a lot of poli-sci university reading lists, and probably a lot of reading lists, maybe a lot of reading lists in high school, I don't know. This is on a lot of banned book lists, and it's an account of the Holocaust, essentially. So I don't have too much to say. I'm excited about it. The art is interesting, and that is all I have to say about that. So yes, those are my new books. Those are books that I've read recently. We're vibing life. I'm feeling a little bit morose today, not gonna lie, but it's okay. It's okay, because you know what? We persevere. We move on always. We have no choice. Time marches on, and nothing is ever the same. We are never the same. So, anyway, I don't know why I said that. Moment to moment. Each moment changes us. Each book changes us. Each word changes us. Each person that we encounter, either physically or through art or books. Anyway, I don't know. I'm being weird. Okay. Thanks for watching. Tell me what you're reading. Tell me what you've bought recently. And yes.